Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Robinhood Capitalists. This is a very, very special Feliz Navidad for everybody. Again, Merry Christmas, day after Christmas special. I'm so excited, Coach, to have this show go. Again, I'm your host, DJ Flores, the Robinhood Capitalist. With me, my coach and yours, Coach Stacey V. Coach, again, I'm jumping right into it. I'm so excited to kind of have him come
Yeah.
out, but it's
Hey,
I mean, it's
since
really what.
we've got John and we've kind of talked a lot on some of the shows about liberty and starting in Canada. In Canada, it's Boxing Day, so happy Boxing Day as well.
There we go. So we'll talk about that. And again, I want to share some of the stories, and I'm so excited to have John on. Obviously, John is how we connected, and how this really. I don't know that this would have continued. Honestly, if we didn't connect, because I needed somebody. I didn't have the. I wasn't brave enough to do it on my own. I'm still not really brave enough to do this on my own. So having somebody else here with me is
Well, and I
great.
had
So
never
thanks,
even
Coach.
tried, so we kind of helped each other for sure. This was a good connection.
It really was, and so obviously want to thank him for really making that possible. But Coach, before we get into that, how was your Christmas? How was your?
It's unbelievable. So it's always great to spend time with family. So my son and his family they were away this year, so we get them in a couple of weeks here at the house. But my daughter and son-in-law and they were here, and we got to travel and see my parents and her mom, and then big dinner with a lot of other extended family. So it was just a great day, long day. How about yours?
It was a long day, you know. So again, with having the young ones, 4 and 7, there's toys again, and just toys to build. So we had a, but I'll tell you, it was a first for us to not. So we got to the other weekend, weekend of the 15th, spend kind of. Usually it was, and a lot of families go through that battle of, okay, we got to. Whose family? Oh, we got to go to this person. We got to go to this family. We're going here. We're going there. We didn't have that this year, obviously, being in Virginia Beach for the first Christmas. So it was, my in laws came to actually spend with us. So that was kind of cool. And really just got to be a little bit different, not have to go everywhere. So it gave the kids more time for us to just stay busy building things. But other
Well,
than that, it
I
was a
didn't
good
have to
day.
build anything, but I love to cook. So there was prime rib on the smoker and lots of fixins and pies and lots of things. So I spent a lot of time in the kitchen, which was cool.
You keep talking about this barbecue, Coach. You're not that far. I'm coming down to see you for
You
barbecue
got to make
soon.
it happen.
Well, again, so I want to get this going. Bring out. We talked a little bit about coaching trees. We talk a lot about. I reference you as coach. My life has been sports. I love sports. I've always been a more of a player coach instead of a. I was never the gifted superstar athlete, but man, did I understand the game. And so, like players coach, like that was me. And so that's why I love and probably call you coach. So, and I never asked you that. I hope that doesn't bother you or drive you crazy, but it's
Yeah,
just so
that's what I
comfortable
do.
for me. But and so coaching, I think, is something I've always kind of looked for. In and then we've talked a lot about coaching trees. And then when we thought about putting this together, and then there was the 7 degree effect again, John Hewitt, and then we had our Jesus takeover week. So I want to get a little bit into that too, because that's where it really all kind of connected the dots together. Was okay, Jesus, mentor, coach, teacher, John Hewitt, you, these connections, these weird things. And it was is when I kind of went on this journey that we talked about, that it was like, and I just kind of gave it over like, okay, yeah, this is real. Like, regardless, I'm just going to go with this. I'm going to make sure that I just control the good wolf inside of me and keep feeding the good wolf, and whatever the universe, like, whatever doors open, they open. And it led to John, and then it led to you. And then, so this, again, the 7 degree effect I want to get into with John. I'm so excited to get him going.
Yeah.
To
So
kind of
so
just
and
thank
we talk
him.
coaching trees that we're going from like the Nick Saban coaching tree and all the coaches that learn from him and take that out. John's got a very extensive coaching tree, and I'm a part of that, which I'm proudly a part of that. I've learned a lot through the years, so I'm excited about this. I'm glad to catch back up with John again.
Ah, man. Well, let's get this going, Coach.
You get one heartbeat song. Take it seriously. This is your masterpiece. Don't forget to dream.
John, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to have you on. Again, I'll never forget you texted me that day. You said, "Hey, you got to reach out to this guy." I shot him a call right away. I was actually leaving somewhere, and Stacey, if you want to continue from there, that the whole journey of that, but that was really the connection of us. And so, for anybody who doesn't know, John Hewitt, the grandfather of franchising, the godfather of taxes, the Hewitt from Jackson Hewitt. I mean, he's if you look up his name, if there's not too many people, if you Google their name, you can find so many business uh, acronyms. And I think it was like 13 years Entrepreneur of the Year award, different, I mean, so many different things throughout your career, John. But so for us, like Stacey talked about, the coaching tree, you're the top. You're the top for coach. It kind of bled to me a lot of your principles. And so just wanted to have you on to thank you first off for what you've done for so many, including pairing us together and just that whole 7-degree effect. But John, if you want to give a little background to you and just for anybody who's joining us now doesn't know your background story, and then we'll just get into a little bit of, I guess, stories between us all.
Sure. I have to say the bad news first. The bad news is I'm now a great grandfather. So you said I was a grandfather of tax, but I'm so old now. I'm a great grandfather. I have 3 great grandchildren and 1 on the way. So, but I'll give you my 54 years in about 3 minutes. I started with H&R Block when I was at the University of Buffalo, 1969. Loved it. 12 years later, I was running 250 H&R Block locations. My dad was the CFO of a public company. He liked the little Apple that he bought by mail better than the mainframe that was running his public company. So he decided we should computerize taxes on a desktop, and we did. We built the first tax software for an Apple computer in 1981, way ahead of its time. No one wanted it. Got blessed and found a company in Virginia Beach called Mel Jackson Tax Service. Mel had died. We bought 6 offices from his widow. The biggest blessing is the weather's so much nicer here than Buffalo. I moved my family here in August of 1982, changed the name to Jackson Hewitt, merged the 2 companies, went public, sold it 15 years later for $483 million. It went on to become $1 billion company. Has 6,000 offices, the 23rd largest retail franchise chain in the country. And when I left, I had a non-compete for 3 years, and it didn't cover Canada because Jackson Hewitt wasn't in Canada. Having grown up in Buffalo, I knew the Canadian tax system. So we started Liberty Tax in Canada, and within 3 years, built one of the top 100 retail franchise chains in Canada. So now I've done it once in the US, once in Canada. Came back to the United States when my non-compete ended in 2000. And not much later, I met Stacey, and Stacey helped me not only grow faster than Jackson Hewitt or H&R Block. We grew faster with his help, with Stacey's major help. We grew faster than both of them combined. We opened 4,000 offices in 12 years. Top 10 fastest growing franchisor ever. My second public company, again, worth $500 million. So my stock, and now I founded Loyalty Brands, and we have 8 different brands that are all franchisors.
Loyalty Brands. So just for y'all, if you're looking, this is what you're looking for. Business built in one direction, and that is up. So Coach, he mentioned you. Come on, I know you got something in there.
No, it was so much fun, and there's so many ways I could go with the questioning. If we could go back though to that beginning, you were at H&R Block. You were happy. The entrepreneurial spirit hadn't really hit you yet. So how was that? How did that come about? Where did you find this? Because as now as a serial entrepreneur, there was obviously something inside. What really brought that out?
Well, actually, I don't tell this story very often. So I'm going to tell you something even you don't know, Stacey, that while I was at H&R Block, my dad and I bought some franchises at H&R Block. So we ran 2 franchises, one in Watkins Glen, New York, that had a satellite in Trumansburg, New York. and the other was right across the border from where I was headquartered at Block in Sayre, Pennsylvania. So I had already an entrepreneur when I started and left and built the first tax software for an Apple computer. I don't tell that story often, but it all comes from my dad. I give Dad all the credit. When I first started H&R Block, for some reason I was 20 years old. My dream come true was to be a H&R Block regional director, and I made it 10 years later. By the time I was 30, and I was all happy. And we had some franchise offices, but my dad was the motivation. He stole me from H&R Block where I was happy. Started me on a whole new venture that's resulted in $1.5 billion of net worth and 10,000 offices. So I'll give all that credit to my dad.
Amazing. And one of my favorite parts of the story is when you went to try to sell the idea of computerized taxes to H&R Block. What was their response?
Yeah, H&R Block was so visionary that I still have a nice letter that I have filed that thank you. You have an interesting approach. We're not ready to spend any money on computerizing at this point, but we're keeping an eye on you. And 10,000 competitive offices later, when they only have 9,000, I'm sure they've kept an eye on me for 42 years. But they said in the annual report in 1983, they wrote, people ask us why we don't computerize. And we say, why should we? We tried it. Doesn't save us any money. Customers don't care. We're never going to computerize. So that's how visionary H&R Block was in 1983.
Now, I remember parts of the story here, it wasn't like a complete bed of roses and you tried to into the side several times, like with Block, that didn't work. So what led to the Mel Jackson purchase? How did that go from the software to that?
We just, when we finished the software in December of 1981, we looked around for a place to use it. And we really didn't. We tested it. My dad had worked for a company called Basco, which was a catalog showroom. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember a catalog showroom, but they had about public company catalog showroom. You would go in order from a catalog, and the merchandise would come in from the back room on a conveyor belt. And it was big in the late 70s and early 80s. And we were going to open in some of their showrooms, but they sold the company in January of 1982. So we didn't have any place to use it. Got lucky. Again, I've been blessed so many times in so many ways. Saw an ad in the Wall Street Journal for a company in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and called right up. And it was on the Wall Street Journal. Used to advertise businesses for sale. They had a page, and it was a big, bold ad. Called up, and they said, well, we can't tell you the name of the company, but they have 6 offices. All we had to do was look in the yellow pages and find a tax company that had 6 offices, but they couldn't tell us the name. So we went right down and negotiated with the widow. He had died, and we bought it from the widow. She was going into seminary. She was going to become a pastor, and you guys are both from the Virginia Beach area, at Rock Church, actually.
Okay.
So
no kidding.
She went to work at Rock Church as a pastor after selling us Mel Jackson Tax Service.
I didn't know that part of the story. That's interesting.
I didn't know that either. Now, Stacey, I don't want to jump in, but I do. You asked a perfect question that I want to get into, and I found this. This is one of the quotes that I found, John, that from ATAX that I love. It's Robert Kiyosaki, but I wasn't born a natural entrepreneur. I had to be trained, and that was. Stacey asked the question, and it was one of the things that really stuck out for me with your story was, and you even said it now when you explained about your dad stole you from H&R Block. You really didn't want to go. Like that transition from corporate world to beginning your own business with your dad. Like a lot of people have that bug and want to do that, but your dad, like you said, kind of pulled you to that. How was that transition? And obviously you're thankful now looking back, but how was that
Yeah,
transition from there?
it was scary. It was scary when we moved to Virginia Beach. We had to we hadn't found a place to sell the software, so we were running out of money.
Wow.
And so when I moved to Virginia Beach, we didn't have any dining room furniture or living room furniture. We had furniture for the kitchen and the family room and the bedrooms, but we were poor. We had to, as part of the deal, we only raised $129,000, and we got an SBA loan. And part of the SBA loan was that the combined salary of because my wife worked in the business too. She had worked with me at Block, and we had been executives at Block and making about 100,000 a year back. I mean, this is 1981, so 81. So that's a lot more in today's dollars. But we could only, until the SBA loan was paid off, we could only make $24,000 combined a year.
Oh,
So
wow.
we really had to tighten our belts, and it was very risky. We didn't have the cash to invest, so I borrowed $25,000 on credit cards. And the bad news was the credit cards were 18%. The good news is that $25,000 became worth $10 million. So it was well worth it, but it was very scary. I remember riding in the car one time saying to my dad, after we couldn't sell to Block or sell to anyone before we bought Mel Jackson, I said to him, "This could be the worst mistake I ever made." He just laughed at me and said, "Don't worry about it. We got it."
Oh, I love it. I love it.
That's awesome. It kind of reminds me of Simon Sinek's book. He's got the book Leaders Eat Last, and so that's kind of the attitude that you were bringing into that. You were kind of taking what was left in a lot of these situations, and a lot of entrepreneurs find themselves. It feels like everybody in the business gets paid, but them. And it's kind of tough to work through that in your mind of because to a certain degree they feel entitled, and so it's kind of dangerous for a lot of early entrepreneurs is that feeling of entitlement and not being willing to go through the struggle.
Mm.
Yeah, I think many entrepreneurs that fail because they pay themselves too much, and they burden their new company. They're not willing to wait for the third or fourth or fifth year when the revenue starts rolling in, and they choke their own company to death because they need to take so much money out of the company.
Mm.
Yeah. Now, can I go a different direction, DJ, or have you got something
Yeah,
else?
no, yeah, go ahead.
Because we talked about coaching trees, and one of the areas I spend a lot of time with other entrepreneurs and trainings and things now is around culture and building a culture. And one of the things I learned from you was how important that culture is. What we had at Liberty was a lot different, and we were still building, and so it wasn't the biggest salaries in the world, but yet we were consistently ranked, best place to work in Hampton Roads and all those kind of things. And you taught me a lot of really important lessons about culture. And one of the first times I got my dad to come eat lunch at the Liberty corporate office, I was dressed in our typical casual Liberty wear. And he was from the older school. He said, "You can't come dressed like this. There's no way you're ever going to be anything at this company dressed like this." And I said, "Well, there's John Hewitt coming out of the door. You want to go talk to him?" And you had on pretty much the exact same thing with a Liberty shirt and a pair of shorts. And my dad was flabbergasted. And so he went from, "I think you've made the biggest mistake of your life," to, "I'm really glad that worked out the way it did," kind of a thing. But when you're thinking of culture, what is so important about that corporate culture? What is it to you that really makes it so critical to an entrepreneur in a company?
Mm.
Yeah, I've been a lifetime student of business, and it wasn't until I was 39 years old, and I was CEO of Jackson Hewitt, and I saw an ad in no, not an ad. I saw an article, and I had grown up in upstate New York, and there was a grocery chain called Wegmans, and um, it said that Wegmans had a 60% market share, in which was unheard of in the grocery industry to have 60% of in their home market of Rochester, New York. That and so I took my top two people up there, and we spent a couple hours in a Wegmans store, and they made food and in the back and so forth, and I really learned this lesson that, well, we interviewed a couple employees just ad hoc, and one of them was standing there with a tray of samples like cheese or something, and I asked her about working there, and she said that it was she was the one that said that it required a certain attitude, that you had to have an attitude. What they hired for is attitude, and it struck me, and that a couple of things, that what I said, well, what happens if they make a mistake, they hire someone and they turn out not to have an attitude that fits? And she said, well, they realize sooner, pretty quickly, that everyone's rah rah around here, and if they don't fit in, then they just go away. And I realized at that point, Walmart and Kmart were just starting to separate. It was 1988, 89, and they both had about 1,500 locations. And Walmart was already dominant, and Kmart was already struggling. And I said to myself, what is the difference between the executives at Walmart and the executives at Kmart? Walmart's doing so much better. Are they smarter? Are they more experienced? Are they more educated? And I said to myself, no, you can hire experience and education, and you can hire the smartest person. It was attitude and culture. And I realized that culture was an asset that should have been put on the books. When you have your balance sheet, and you have equipment and cash, and there should be something called culture, because culture separates truly great companies from the pack.
I remember having that conversation when I went from technology to training. I asked you because I said I know how to win on the technology side. I'm not sure how to define winning on the training side. And you said if you can take our culture and spread it to every store we have in North America, then you will have been successful. And that's I tried my best to take that culture and move it forward. And it's so tenuous because after when we really hit the high growth and things started coming. We kind of lost our grip on the culture and things took a turn, and it was a valuable lesson on both ends to see it when it was really at its best and after we had kind of lost our grip on
Culture is a lot easier to maintain in a central facility, in a central city. As you expand into all 50 states and 150 different markets and television markets, it's a real struggle to maintain that culture. The culture is incredibly valuable and incredibly precious, and again, hard to maintain outside of the main building.
it. Yeah, I learned that.
Yeah. Now, Coach, you said to go down a different route, but it's crazy. So the only other Hewittism I have is this one, and it is: if you aren't happy going into work on Mondays, you're in the wrong business. And that is from John. And that's one thing that I share at the end of every show. If you're one of those that on Sundays you get that feeling like, oh, I don't want to do this, or Mondays you're not looking forward to it, you're just not in the right place. So John, that was one of the things that, and attitude you went to. Um, I love your view on attitude, and hire for attitude, you can train for skill. When did you acquire that, and when did that become a bigger focus than really looking for somebody to upskill first?
Yeah, it was about in the early 90s we got together at Jackson Hewitt, and after we began to become successful in a public company, and we sat down and did our mission statement and our principles, and our mission statement was winning customers for life. And so back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, um, there was a philosophy that it was all about customers, which was a great philosophy. But Herb Kelleher, the one of the first founding CEOs of Southwest Airlines, he wrote a book, and it was called Nuts. And in Nuts, he said, we say our customers are number one, but that's not true. You have to treat your employees as number one in order for them to treat your customers as number one. And then, so um, I realized that I have been doing that. I've been treating my employees well, but I really didn't mention it, focus on it, talk about it enough. And so we realized that we needed to treat our employees well so that they would treat customers well. And I realized long ago that, as you said in that quote, Monday morning you're going to work, you're not looking forward to it, you're working at the wrong place. Life is way too short. And more than 50% of Americans, it's sad that more than 50% of Americans don't look forward to it. And that's why the big, huge phrase is, thank God it's Friday. I mean, everyone lives by that phrase. My phrase is, thank God it's Monday. And
Yeah.
if you can't, and only a few of us get to live that dream, that thank God it's Monday.
So a lot of times you would bring people in and you weren't even really certain where they fit in the company. You just felt like they would fit. And so like at trainings, I would have people introduce themselves as a corporate employee, and oh really? What department are you in? Well, I'm not sure yet. What is it you see in people when because you have a lot of times just a short amount of time with them, but you'll see something that says this is somebody I want to hang on to.
Yeah, I have a new person starting on January next week, and she's 26 years old, 25 or 26 years old. She's starting as an intern. We don't know where we're going to use her, but it comes from that philosophy of Tom Watson Sr. said it well. He's one of the founders of IBM, and he said, "Give me 100 great engineers, or give me 100 people with great attitude." He said, I'll take the 100 people with great attitude, because you can teach engineering. You can't teach attitude. And in my career, I've I've made the mistake hundreds of times probably by now of trying to change people's attitude. And I'm over 100 or over 200 or over whatever it is. I've struck out dozens, if not hundreds of times trying to change people's attitude. I've just seen a lot of people change departments, like yourself, Stacey, you and also DJ. You guys change position. I've seen people over the years change departments, learn skills. And when you think about it, there is no industry in this country, if the world, where you can just step into a job. You can come out of college, even if you're a doctor or a dentist or whatever you are, you're highly trained, spent as a doctor, you spent 8 or 10 years in school. You come out and you're an intern, right? You have to step in and learn. And so it starts with hiring for attitude.
Yeah, the so many things are coming to my mind through the years. Another thing that you taught me, because we've talked a lot about books, and so Nuts was one that you would assign us books to read, and then we would discuss in management team meetings, or and you would also have me lead book studies with our franchisees at our advanced trainings. but every year you would pick a new book so that we were continuously learning. And then so continuous learning was a big one. And the other one that was really important, you told me early on, at every training you do, I want you to work on delegation with the entrepreneurs, delegation and empowering their people. And so this whole idea of learning to delegate and then being a continuous learner, can you give us a little bit on that?
Yeah, those are two different things, right? The continuous learning is I believe this, that I always have built the best system in the industry. So when I was at Block, they had best system. Jackson Hewitt had the better system. Liberty had a better system, and now ATEX has the best system. So every time I moved on, I've changed and improved the system. But change and improvement is key to the best system. You can't have a system that's number one that isn't evolving. You have to evolve your system, and the best way to improve your system is listen to your people. And in a franchise world, it's a lot easier than in a corporate world, because when you get in a corporate world, you get a lot of you get a lot of suck ups, and that will agree with you. And I find that if we agree, then one of us is useless. And I pick you, right? So uh, so you see that with employees, that 50% of employees will just run, oh yeah, John, a great idea, right? But with franchisees, even when they're totally wrong, they always are whining and complaining, and they have a new way of doing it. And sometimes they're right. And it's the easiest way to improve is if someone criticizes you. If no one ever criticizes you, it's real hard to improve. You get this silly philosophy that you got it all going on and you're the real thing, and you never have it all going on. You always have to be on the improve. So improvement is key to me, to have the greatest system. Now delegation, that's a different thing. That's a different topic. What I found in bringing in 5,200 franchisees, for example, that virtually every one of them wanted to have multiple locations. They all, and in the industry, the average franchisee has about 6 or 7 locations, but everyone wanted to have more than, almost everyone wanted to have more than one. But what I saw was a real disease, that once they got outside of their one building and went to a second building that was 10 minutes away or an hour away or half hour away, they couldn't delegate. And so it's the first or second biggest disease in American management. And so I've pulled my hair out trying to teach people to delegate over the years. And I've had more success with that than I have with changing attitude, but I haven't had great success with that. I haven't, less than 50% of the poor delegators have made, far less than 20% or 50%, probably more like 10 or 20% have learned to delegate.
So through the years, I've developed a system of steps that I've been training from that work pretty well. And everybody leaves going, okay, I know exactly how to be really good at this, but very few actually go out and execute. So it's it's very similar.
So you can identify with the 10 to 20%.
Absolutely. And
Now, do
DJ,
you think?
before you ask
Go
DJ,
ahead. Go ahead. Yeah,
the
yeah.
no, at all, I just want you to know, at all the advanced trainings we would do for franchisees every year, it was delegation, and he would assign a book that we would cover with the franchise base of something that it seemed important for them to be learning and growing from. So that was something we did, and we traveled throughout the country to make sure all the franchisees had access to it.
Okay, I love that. I love that. Now, do you think the common thread, or I guess, what was the common hurdle that you would help, or you would find for the struggle of delegation? I feel like most people struggle to delegate because they just don't trust the other person, or the people they're delegating are going to do it as good as they will. Is that the biggest hurdle? To just getting them to trust somebody else?
Actually, there's lots of reasons that people come up with for not delegating. But what people don't understand is the most important part of delegation. So the number one most important element of delegating is inspecting your expectations. So it's easy to tell someone what to do. It's easy. You can just say, I need you to go mail these 20 envelopes. Or, I mean, it's easy to tell someone something. The un, the ease of getting someone to understand what you want is not is incredibly difficult. It's sort of like telephone story where you go around a room and you tell a story and it changes every time. And so I learned a lot of valuable lessons in delegation. That one is that if you have a project, and let's say one of the projects is, I want you to call 100 people, and this is what I want to know from them. I want to know, for example, I want to know what topics they want to cover in advanced training, or what top. And so I learned a long time ago that if you delegate a project and give them the whole project, that it's going to fail most of the time. So what you do is you give them a sample of the project. So if I want you to make 100 phone calls, and I tell you the result, you tell me you understand, and then I say, go make 5 calls or 10 calls and come back to me and give me the results. And virtually every time they didn't do what I wanted, and or virtually every time they improved on the way to do it, because if you tell them this is exactly what you have to do, then you're limited by your own ability to pre-think of everything and to believe that they're not going to run into obstacles that they need to overcome. So you need to give them the result they need to obtain, and you need to monitor it early and often to make sure that they're doing it. But monitoring is the number one most important part of delegation.
You were very clear, and again, you taught me some lessons there too about being clear with even how you wanted me to communicate with you. So instead of leaving it up to chance, the first email I ever sent you, you called me into the office and said, I'm going to have to teach you how to write an email. But it was uncomfortable for me at first. But the lesson I learned was I had at that point like 70 tech support people sending me all kinds of garbage, and I was never bold enough to tell them clearly what I expected from them. And so it was an incredibly important lesson of clarity and making sure those expectations are known. The and I told this at a convention one year, that, and I forgot whose convention speech it was, but I said they emailed it to you, and you said, are you sure this is the best you can do? And they went back and worked for hours and hours and got it back and sent it again, and you said, now, are you really sure this is the best you can do? And after the 4th time, they went back and you said, is this the best you can do? And they went, yes, there's nothing more I can do. And you said, okay, I'll read this one. Well, that was funny.
That is funny, and that goes to again another lesson we share often on this show, John. That we always give credit to you as challenging the status quo, the ham bone story, but really it's just, and going back to your idea of always changing and not being stuck. That you always have to be evolving and listening to. That's probably for me, and making sure that everybody doesn't believe what you think. Those 2 ideas were probably just like magic to me. That it was like, okay, I need to make sure there's differencing opinions in the room every time. Otherwise, like, we're not learning anything. But then I love that you always let people go first. And I think in one of our talks, maybe Stacey was possibly on the call this time, but you were talking about letting other people go first to make mistakes. And there's kind of that idea of employees will say, or be, you don't know if they're just kissing your butt to say what you say. So you let them go first. And a lot of people feel like you're baiting for mistakes. But one of your biggest out of the I Compete book, and again, as soon as I first met you and they're like, hey, you wrote a book, I'm like, okay, I'm reading the book. Chapter 5 was, whoa, mistakes are the biggest lesson. Yeah, I've made a lot of mistakes myself, but they're small mistakes. But then it was understanding that a wise man's game, like you said, is mistakes, and then learning from other people's books, and the idea of reading other people's books to learn from those mistakes. When did you start really incorporating that? Because that was kind of like the thing that was like, okay, I can learn so much from my mistakes, but when I learn from people who have done things that I can only imagine, that's when I really started to, I guess, kind of connect some dots.
Yeah, there. I'm a student. I always want to be best at whatever I do, from as long as I can remember. So I always, and that's why the name of the book is I Compete. So whatever I'm doing, whether I'm an athlete or a student or whatever, I want to win, and to win you have to improve. And I quickly learned in my career that there weren't a lot of people at my level around me. So I wasn't going to learn a lot from them. So in meantime, you hear story after story about great entrepreneur, about the Sam Waltons of the world. And so I voraciously read everything I could find on of Walter Avis and the Avis story, and Sam Walton, Made in America is the name of his book. And
Yeah.
I grabbed and as I became more and more experienced, and even today, and more so today, of course, but when I read a book or attend a meeting, I typically only get about one or two great ideas, but it seems like I always get one or two. Most of it comes, I understood it, and I get it, but once in a while it's a different way of saying it, thinking of it, and that I have lots of moments of appreciation. One of my teammates or people that work for me came in one day, for example, and he said, "John, last night I had an epiphany." And I said, "Oh, what?" And he said, "You keep trying to get us to think outside the box." And he said, "And what we do is we think outside the box, and then, boop, we pop back in the box." And he said, I realized last night while I was sleeping that you're never in the box." And I had never thought of that. That I'm so crazy, there's no box can contain me. I just am full of crazy, kind of like you, DJ. I mean, that's more you than Stacey, but you're both out of the box. But I can't be kept in a box, and Stacey, I don't, or DJ, I don't think you can be either.
No, sir. No, I can't. I learned that as well. Yes, I'm very aware of that now. And I learned words matter. So, Stacey, if you want to go, that's another thing I learned.
How this is just curious to me as a kid from upstate New York, and you were reading books like the Sam Walton book, and to go from being the kid in upstate New York to actually having meetings at their headquarters and signing big deals with companies like Walmart and being on Wall Street. Is it surreal? How sometimes it seems it'd be hard to kind of wrap your head around what kind of, it's just such a journey.
Yeah, it is surreal, and it's amazing to me a bit because when I was growing up, when I was typical of any child, when I was a teenager, and I looked at those big companies and huge companies like IBM, or back then it was US Steel and Ford or I mean, it was a different world back in the 50s and 60s. But I said, those guys must be really smart. Those executives, those CEOs. And as I grew up, I realized, no, I doubt them. They're not. They're not. And there are varied capabilities and varied talent. And there's very few that are the cream of the crop, the little extra. And so I've always sought out the success stories and tried to learn from the mistakes that they had made. As you said, smart people learn from their mistakes. Wise people learn from the mistakes of others. But another part of mistakes is they say the most successful people have made the most mistakes. So I made more mistakes than almost everyone. So I freely acknowledge that. Zillions of mistakes. The good news is the leaders and the thought leaders and the most successful people learn from them, get up and keep going, knowing that they're going to make mistakes. but I've learned not to make big mistakes. I learned to keep my mistakes, never roll out anything on a national level. Test everything before you make it policy and procedure and principle of the whole organization.
That's
And DJ,
that's advice right there.
yeah, it really is. And I know you wanted to talk networking, but real quick before we get there, another along those lines, I hadn't been there long, and we had a major outage at the corporate office, and we were kind of running around with our hair on fire and all upset, and you just walked in very confidently and looked around and said, "I can tell you guys have this under control," and then you just left. And I thought, well, I can't believe he has that kind of confidence in us. But what it did is it slowed us down. We fed off of the confidence, and within a very short period of time, we had figured it out and turned it around. But that level of empowerment, I don't get to see that level of empowerment very often. But I'm sure you had to walk out of the building with some concern, but you hit it very well. But that was also just a great lesson of leadership, I thought.
Okay.
Thank you. I've learned, and there's a lesson there that when you're building companies, and many of the people you're talking to are entrepreneurs, that, and someone asked me just last week, who's the first person I should hire? So I'm starting my own business. Who should I hire first? And I said, what you have to do is look at your own skill set and hire someone with different skills. I know nothing about electricity and power and all. I mean, I hire people with those skills. So the biggest mistake you can make is hire people that have the same exact skills you do. And so I hired people that could solve problems that I wasn't good at. And so that's a lesson learned in what you saw is I couldn't do anything in that situation. It wasn't up to me, but I trusted in them. I knew that I had the best people that would solve the problem in the most expeditious way.
Hire good people and then trust them and empower them to do their jobs. I
Right.
like it.
Like yourself, Stacey. I mean, you were you were at conventions. You would stand up there and be a speaker in front of 2,500 people and do it with such ease. It was like you were trained for a lifetime to do that. And as I recall, you had little or no training in that. But it terrified me to stand up in front of 2,500 people and talk. And you did it so confidently and so well, and everyone applauded your efforts. I could barely get up and make my 10-minute speech.
Well, I appreciate those kind words.
I love it.
Looking back, that was some of the best times of my life. But it was just incredible, and a truly a proving ground. You're right. It was a lot of learning and invaluable learning. It just unbelievable. It put my life went on a whole different course because of that.
Agreed, and that's where we led to this. I mean, that's how this all happened. It's the 7 degrees of you, John, and just your always thinking outside of the box and always really trying to find talent in crazy places. Like me, a kid from Cleveland. it was crazy, but hey, you gave me a shot, and I can't thank you enough for, again, the experience, lessons, and even not even the business lessons. And that's where this whole idea of this show kind of came to really it was really just eating at me for a few days almost. And then I'm like, Stacey, I want to have a Jesus takeover. Like I see kind of the world. I see we're having to draw lines. Like we just need people to understand good, evil. Like, what side do you want to be on? And I've never heard anybody say, and I heard you, and I told Stacey this, I heard you not only say it in either the book or a recording somewhere that Jesus was your mentor, but I got to hear you say it right in my face in front of me in Columbus to Craig. I'll never forget it. I was like, wow, he put you on the spot. He said, hey, who's your mentor? And I thought, is he going to say somebody else? What is he going to say? And you said Jesus. And I was like, wow. Because it was one of those things that when you introduced me to the Shack, and I don't know if you remember that whole conversation and dinner, but you said, hey, read this book. You asked me if I believe. we kind of talked about forgiveness, a little bit about mistakes, and that's where it tied a lot of things for me. But then it was the book, The Shack, and the movie that was like, wow, okay, I get what you're. And it wasn't. I don't know if there was something you were telling or you could feel with me, but it was just something I needed at that time. But then it was like when I heard you say again, Jesus, your mentor. When did that start? When did you really say like Jesus is my mentor? And because clearly you look up to your dad. Your dad obviously pushed you to do the risk of starting business and really this journey that you have. And you gave a lot of thanks to your parents in your book, and I Compete, about wanting to outgive them. And that's what kind of drove you, was wanting to outgive them. That was another thing that pushed me. I was kind of lost at my world and like, okay, well, I'm going to listen to John. He said he's going to outgive his parents. I'm going to outgive God. Like, who's my parents? Okay, God's my parent. Let's see if I could do that. And so I didn't really know like what that would mean. But it just really was, I guess, more of a, let me see how this works, because I feel really stuck. But so it was a lot of things that connected dots for me. That was thank you again to you and I Compete and the book and us meeting at those times. But this was really what put this all together, the seven. So I want to thank you for that. But also, when was it that you did like, Jesus is my mentor. This is who I'm going to say is my mentor, and I'm just going to follow, and just right or wrong, this is it. Like, I'm going to learn from my mistakes. I'm going to ask for forgiveness constantly, but Jesus is my mentor. When did that happen?
Well, I'm not sure exactly how it happened, except for what I am sure of is I've never respected another human being enough to believe in everything they've said. And so it was an easy decision that as human beings we're flawed, right? And Peter Drucker, a great business author, said people who have great strengths have great weaknesses. And so I look around me and even myself, right? If I believe I have great strengths and therefore I have great weaknesses. And if you accept that even the greatest human beings have, with the greatest strengths, have great weaknesses, then the only place to turn without weakness, I mean, I never saw a story or a word that Jesus said that I didn't agree with, right? So how
Yeah.
could you go away from that? I felt a little strange. I did a podcast earlier this morning, and I mentioned God and the Bible way more times than usual because of the questions he asked, and he never responded in any way. So I wondered if he felt offended that I was talking about. I said the talent story and on, and I mean I just told stories about things that I learned from the Bible. He about principles, for example. I told the story about how he said, "How did you learn that principles were so important?" And I said, "I was sitting in church, and the minister said every one of us sins every day." And I said, "Wow, that surprised me. That I get that I sin, but he admitted that he sinned every day, and it didn't occur to me until about 3 months later." And this is 30, 35 years ago. It didn't occur to me that 3 months later that if every one of us is sinning and not following God's principles, who's going to follow Loyalty Brands principles or Liberty Tax principles or Jackson Hewitt principles? No one's going to follow the principles. No one. And so I looked at it in a different way. And we have to do a better job of knowing that we have to understand that we're not going to always understand the principle. And so I came up with a couple of novel things that Stacey probably hasn't talked about. He can talk about, he can do a whole show on culture and I think and on our notepads. What we did at Jackson Hewitt was novel. I've never seen another company do it. We had our 10 principles and we put them on a pad. And every employee got a pad. And if you saw someone violate the principle, you would write them a violation. If you saw someone that lived up to the principle, you would write that, and you would give it to the employees and all the employees in the company. Or you have one? Is that one?
That's one.
Is that one from Liberty or?
It's one from Liberty. When my daughter was really little, she visited at my office and she wrote me one that said "Good job," and that's all it really said. But that's the one that I kept.
But
Stays on my desk.
the employees at Liberty, not only did they put up the good ones, some of them employees, the best employees, put up the negative ones. And so yeah, it's the guide. My guidebook is really the Bible.
Yeah.
I got one negative one in 20 years at Liberty, John, and it was from you for a violation that I did on a principle, and it was an incredible lesson, because what you taught me is that following a rule that violates a principle is the rule that's wrong, not the principle. I should have come to you instead of violating the principle to meet a rule. And I've still got that one in my in the desk over there in my filing cabinet.
Nice.
That is great. Oh my goodness. This was awesome. I could talk all day with you, John and Stacey. This is crazy. The stories. Thank you so much for doing this, John. So obviously want to wrap this up. I want to be, I know I think you have a meeting after this, so I want to be conscious of your time, but seriously, thank you so much for really, you're the top of our coaching tree. You're definitely for me and Coach, a lot of the status quo to outside the box to the most of the stuff we share is a lot on that. So really, I can't thank you enough just for what you've done for obviously putting this together and making this. But where can they find you? Obviously, how can they reach out? What's next for Loyalty Brands? What's coming in 2024? If you want to wrap up with that.
Yeah, you can reach out to me at loyaltybrands.com. I'm just John at loyaltybrands.com. Easy to find. I'm on Wikipedia.
Yes, he is.
And the biggest, it's sort of the 80-20 rule, the fastest growing brands. We have two fastest growing. The mobile pet grooming and ATAX are incredibly fast growing. And, I'm the only person that's developed two of the top 100 retail chains. And they say third time's the charm. Hopefully I'll have a third one. And it looks like it's not going to be in tax. It looks like it's going to be in mobile grooming, that we're going to be another top 100 franchise chain for me. And it's just, I'm incredibly grateful to have found the pet industry. Love it.
Zooming grooming. It's blowing up all over the country. Amazing growth.
It absolutely is. And it's pets are the new kid. It's John. You taught me that, John. I mean, the knowledge of just looking at markets and understanding markets and that stuff was changed my life. So, and that the pet industry, if you guys haven't seen it, Zooming grooming, I mean, it's blowing up everywhere. I'm sure. If you haven't seen it, reach out. Check out Loyalty Brands. Look up John Hewitt. You're gonna find it. It really is that niche, the convenience industry. It's a booming industry, and you guys. I'm so excited that I was even a part of that. So thank you for allowing me to even just be part of that, because it was crazy to see the growth and crazy to see the excitement. Just so many opportunities for people left and right. I mean, Corinne here locally, Corinne, just the way it changed her life, having her on as one of our guests and her story was
that was great.
Unbelievable. So,
well, thank you guys. This was a fun hour.
Thank you again,
right. I have to run to my next hour.
Yes. Well,
thank you so much, John.
Always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Always on the red eye. This time around, it's not even about getting paid. I'm just an